Good day, everyone. I'll take this moment to remind everyone on the Zoom that we have simultaneous interpretation. Select language you would like to listen to at the interpretation icon on the lower part of your screen. You can choose English or French. Welcome to the Regreening Africa Roundtable on unlocking large-scale land restoration practices, approaches, and benefits in sub-Saharan Africa. This is an event of the EU-funded project on Regreening Africa, managed by the C4ICRAF and implemented by a wide range of partners. As we get started, we'd be delighted to know who we're interacting with. We're so happy that you have joined. So if you could kindly please share your affiliation, your name, your country in the chat box. We'd be delighted to have those introductions. Thank you so much. So we're very excited to have you here. We have a number in the Zoom webinar, and we're also have many participating through social media on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. So thank you again for joining. And right now, we just have a few slides on logistics. Our 4-hour roundtable will be divided into 5 sections: a brief welcoming and stage setting, then 3 sessions of 1 hour each, scaling out context-based practices for session 1, Regreening Africa Science Practice Policy Partnership for session 2, and session 3 will cover economic and policy incentives. And we will end with a brief reflections and summary by a number of our valued guests, and we look forward to closing at the appointed hour. For those of you to know, in each of the sessions, we will have a series of dynamic speakers. We will have questions for the attendees. We'll have questions from you, and at the end of each session, a brief stretch break. And we will end up with the set of speakers who reflect on the event at the end and tell us what Regreening has brought to their tables. Now, how do we participate? We want to just say a few things about this. We are using a webinar format on Zoom platform and streaming on social media, as I've mentioned. On Zoom, you can select the French or English language. On social media, the language that will be heard will be the language spoken. On Zoom, we invite you to register your comments and insights in the chat box. And on social media, please register your comments in the comments section. And then the next set of logistics, we ask you to post questions throughout the session on Zoom by clicking the Q&A and registering your questions. On social media, register your questions in the comments section. We will be fielding the questions at the end of sessions 1, 2, and 3. For our speakers, we please invite you to keep time, be as brief as you are brilliant. We are getting ready to have some welcoming remarks. Let's go ahead and get started. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce our opening speakers, who are Mika Born Oching, Ravi Prabhu, and Bernard Krabe. I want to also recognize our facilitators. My name is Constance. Our other facilitators, both in terms of process and in terms of technical, Patrick Worms, Lee Winawicki, and Pierre Andrea Pirani. And I also want to give a special thanks to many people behind the scenes and the communication teams from Tree Shake, Counts Collective, and C4ICRAF. Now, before I turn it over to our program manager, Mika Borm, I wanted to set a bit of a frame in the next slide. Land restoration happens at the local landscapes, in the local landscapes, and there are implementation actions, aspirations, goals, and commitments from the local landscape to the global level. Each of these different scales are influenced by and influence each other. During 2021, we gained excellent momentum for land restoration and the accompanying benefits during the launch of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, and also the FAO Advancing Food Systems Thinking in Action through the UN Food Summit. And we ended as well with commitments from the IPCC, Sixth Assessment, and the COP27. Through the remainder of the year, we have a number of upcoming events for land restoration to shine: the GLF Africa Conference, the UN Convention on Biodiversity, and the first Africa UNFCCC COP, COP27. We see this as an opportune time to have this roundtable focused on unlocking large-scale restoration practices, approaches, and benefits, to share successes, to capture messages, all that can be taken forward to accelerate the scaling of land restoration. And now with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Mika Bourne, Program Manager for Regreening Africa.
Thank you so much, Constance. And it's wonderful to see people coming online. We have over 400 people registered, and I can see that people are joining quite quickly. So welcome to all of our participants. And we'll be reminding in the chat some of the housekeeping if you've missed it on the introduction. So as Constance mentioned, my name is Mika Bourne. I'm the Program Manager for Regreening Africa, and I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, working at C4ECRAF. So I'd like to give a very brief introduction to Regreening Africa, because for the next few hours, you will be hearing all of the different dimensions about the partnership, the practices, and the approaches that we're using in the program. So Regreening Africa is a very ambitious program. It started in 2017, and it aims to reverse land degradation across 1 million hectares of land over these countries that you can see on the map, 4 in West Africa and 4 in East Africa, and to benefit over 500,000 households. The program aims to incorporate trees into croplands, communal lands, and where appropriate pastoral areas with complementary land management practices and other approaches. The program has been very successful. By its 4th year, it had reached out to over 400,000 households and over 600,000 hectares. And we're in the process of completing inline surveys to be able to verify the number of households and hectares that are actually taking up these practices, the level of reversal of land degradation that we're seeing, and the benefits to those households. You'll be hearing later about a Regreening Africa app that we're using in the program, and that has already been able to capture over almost 400,000 hectares and over 140,000 households, so that we're able to track these areas over large periods of time. So Regreening Africa has been a very successful program in achieving its targets so far, and we really look forward to sharing some of the lessons and some of the experience that we've had. Just a very brief outline on the sessions. We have these 3 sessions today, as Constance has outlined. One of them focusing really around the practices and how we adapt them to the local conditions, both environmental and the local needs, taking into account the situation now and the changes that can be expected in the future. Our second session will really look at the science practice policy partnership, how we've brought together a diversity of actors to inform policy and incentives, as well as provide technical support on practices. And the third session will primarily focus around incentives, equitable economic as well as policy incentives that really provide a driver and an incentive for those that are practicing land restoration on the ground. These sessions are, of course, interrelated and linked, but we have separated them to provide some guidance and structure to the program. So we're really excited to hear from a range of speakers from all of these different countries, to hear about the science, the practice, and the policy, and we look forward to interacting with you as we go. So I'm handing back over to you, Constance, just as I mentioned that we are also on the road to GLF Africa. So we'll be putting into the chat how you can also register for GLF Africa, which will take place next Thursday. And this is looking across Africa on equitable, resilient food future. And we're very excited that Regreening Africa is on this road to GLF Africa and contributing to the large ambitions on the continent.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mika. And now I'm delighted to invite welcoming remarks. First, from Dr. Ravi Prabhu, the Director of Innovation, Investment, and Impact at C4 Aircraft, and he will be followed by Mr. Bernard Krabbe, Team Leader, Environment Mainstreaming and Circular Economy with the European Commission, DG International Partnerships. Ravi, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Constance, and thank you very much, Mika, for setting the scene. They heard about the amazing achievements of this project, focus on technologies and approaches and all these kind of things. In my opening remarks, I want to focus on three things: ambition, people, and belief. This program, when it came to us, and Bernard will speak a little bit more about this, was clearly, as Mika pointed out, extremely ambitious, trying to do a great deal with very little. It was very clear to all of us that this would not work if we tried to do business as usual. So we set out right at the beginning of business unusual, and you'll hear about that today. I'm not going to go into that very much. But in order to do business unusually, you have to have faith in each other and in the people around you, in your teams. And this is what I want you to listen for and hear all of the remarkable achievements: the collaboration, the innovation, the adaptation, the willingness to learn, and above all, the willingness to care enough to believe that despite the odds that you can get this done. This is important not just for the Regreening project. We face at the moment challenges that, all of us would really like to just close the door, shut the window, and shut out of our lives. But it is exactly those kinds of challenges that we need to rise to. And that means trusting the right kind of people, believing, innovating, learning, and therefore delivering. So I don't want to take much more time because you've got an exciting program ahead of you. It has been an incredible privilege for me to be associated with this program from the beginning. And 5 years ago, if anybody had told me that this is where we were going to be, I would not believe them, because I genuinely thought we may get halfway there, we may get a little bit more than halfway there, but we won't get all the way there. And that is all due to the kind of people who have engaged, not just in the project teams, but their counterparts in the communities who have risen to the challenge in landscape after landscape after landscape. This is an incredible story. Enjoy it. Back to you, Constance.
Thank you so much, Robbie. And I really appreciate those words to kick us off. Bernard, may I turn it over to you, please?
Sure, certainement. J'espère que vous m'entendez.
Of course, I hope you can hear me. Permit me to say one or two things in French, because it's very important to note that countries that are involved in this program, this great program, some of them are francophone. So I'll start with a few words in French. It is a pleasure, first of all. I thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me to participate in this event organized by this Regreening Africa project. It's an amazing time for me to share today with friends. I see some of them: Ravi, Dennis, Mike, Mika, Constance, Elvis, Patrick, and all of you. I'd like to acknowledge specifically not only friends of C4 and World Agroforestry, but also friends from partner organizations. We have quite a number of them, and without you, the program wouldn't be where it is. And it's already on your screen. World Vision, Care, Oxfam, Sahel, Echo. You see them on the screen, and GLD, and GIZ. So thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to share this.
Back to English, if you allow me. So The EU is definitely a proud supporter of this program. At the inception, it's a co-creation. It was a pleasure to co-create this. And it's very nice to see 4 years after the inception, indeed, as Ravi said, that we have gone such a long way. It's the figures, I think, that Mika just presented a talk for themselves. As Ravi said, this program is business unusual, and indeed, I think it's extremely important considering the context. We see that the overall context and the way it is changing is calls from us definitely business unusual approaches. We see and we hear it from everywhere. It is code red for humanity. It's not anymore as Johan Rockström said yesterday or the day before yesterday in the launch of a new book of the follow-up to the Meadows report. It's not that we are heading to the wall, we are now hitting the wall. And so as part of the solution, trees and healthy soils are essential. We will not achieve climate neutrality quickly unless we grow trees and unless we better manage our soil. They are essential to avoid climate breakdown and the collapse of societies, definitely, but they're also essential more basically, of course, to build these productive and resilient food systems that we need. And we see again with the current food crisis that it is essential to promote these sustainable food systems. They are essential to mitigate the impacts of droughts. They are essential to protect us against floods. They are essential to sustain livelihoods. I think this is known by everybody around the table, but it's very important to recall that in the context that we are in today. So this program, again, as I said, it's not one among many programs that we are supported. It's very much close to our heart. It's important. It's an amazing program. It was conceived as a pilot to influence, to inspire, and to inform broader action, both by partner governments and by EU delegations across the world. We have seen through the achievement, it went well beyond simply a pilot. We have achievements at scale. Again, more than 400,000 households, more than 600,000 hectares. That's simply amazing. And we believe there is a lot to learn from this program. So this event of today is extremely important in terms of documenting what we do. And we believe we need to do a lot in the coming 6 months and beyond to document everything that we have and to spread the word around. So I really invite you to reach out to partner governments, to EU delegations, to other donors, with all the takeaways that you will take from today's meeting, because there is a lot to learn from here. And this is not simply a project. I think we had the ambition of this being the start of more than a project, but of a movement. And again, we see the end of not as the closing of or the start of the closing of project, but really the beginning of a new phase where we can mobilize a much broader community around this effort. And this is important for many of the EU priorities, obviously. First, the importance of building sustainable and resilient agricultural and food systems across the world, but in particular in Africa, which is particularly important. We see it every 6 or 7 months. We have a wake-up call that recalls how it is important to work on agriculture. We have a new one with now the war in Ukraine. It's important for biological diversity, and this year will be important with the CBD, the UN Decade on restoration. And it's important as well from an EU standpoint to support the Great Green Wall implementation. You know that there is a very bold and commitment of the EU to support this Pan-African initiative, which is driven by many friends in Africa, including Elvis that I see here on the screen. So that this program can contribute to build the momentum around the Great Green Wall. And that's really the ambition of the EU, to build a Pan-Africa impactful action in support of the Great Green Wall. So I will not take much more time, but again, I wishing you fruitful discussions today. I will try to attend as much as I can. This is again a subject close to my heart as an agronomist and an environmentalist. But again, an invitation to continue in the coming months to reach out very actively to all the stakeholders that need to be mobilized around this agenda, starting with our delegations in your countries in Africa. If we can facilitate, we will do it, and trying to mobilize based on the remarkable achievements of this program. Sorry, I've been a bit long. The floor.
Thank you so much. We certainly appreciated those messages. You were very enthusiastic about the fact that it can be done and the urgency to keep on getting it done. Very much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mika Born to start out our first substantive session. Mika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Constance, and thank you to Bernard and Ravi for wonderful opening remarks. We are just about to start our first session, which is really looking at scaling out context-based practices. I'd like to invite my colleague, Sammy Carson, to just speak to the next two slides.
Thank you so much, Mika. So really, Regreening Africa project restoration approach has involved accelerating tree establishment in the areas, really following locally relevant options. And one of those locally option is farmer managed natural regeneration. In other contexts, of course, like in Somalia, where ruralist economy, they call it pastoralist managed natural regeneration. So again, us taking an adaptive management approach and not looking at this option as a silver bullet, but really refining applications that actually serve restoration needs and also people's needs. So we've combined this with also other opportunities like cost targeting degraded communities, and especially in the context of Ethiopia, where we actually see a lot of degradation in communal areas, given that management is limited and given that open access is actually the norm. So applying open enclosures and also exposure plans so that we are actually having restoration up. So to avoid the common mistakes often occurring with a lot of projects, doing tree planting, we combine a lot of efforts again to enrich what is happening in FMNR plots, especially because we see situations where diversification of FMNR plots becoming an important issue. A lot of course, degradation has happened, and a lot of trees and stumps have already been moved, and the soils are actually losing the seed that would regenerate. So we've combined the FMNR approach with enrichment planting, so that we are actually also having a bit of high-value tree to combine to what we are offering communities, but also then adapting management approaches that integrate trees and optimize tree integration within farms. So looking at opportunities and niches we can actually include along contours, along homesteads, also as trees serving as fodder banks, woodlots, and also fruit orchards. So we've been approached by a lot of stakeholders to support public area planting, roadside planting, community areas, communal hills, restoration, parks, restorations, but also we've tried to adapt a lot in terms of accelerating planting activities through direct sowing options. One of the other innovations that we've had is really looking at grafting, especially because we're talking about fruits, and also improving some of the varieties that communities are using. So another approach that we've encouraged and really promoted is use of home gardening, and especially for women, where there is no control of land areas, or farming areas, or communal areas. So we are bringing some of the options in terms of tree uses in gardening patterns, and especially for leafy vegetables, really to support also food provisioning. Next slide. Yes, so and again, in most contexts, what we've seen is it's not enough to only do tree planting. So allow demand again to look at the broader issues in terms of the physical situation of the soil, looking at what can we do in terms of soil and water conservation. So a lot of structural support to communities to really do earth mounds, to do stone beds, to do contour planting, to also look also at the soil health in terms of manure application, but also biomass incorporation. But all these practices again don't go alone. So a lot of work going on into supporting the practices application in terms of looking into what genetic resources can actually be availed to communities so that they're actually diversifying what they're producing, what seeds are available, what science are available, and all these things that actually go into tree planting. We managed to install quite a number of nurseries. We managed also to look into trees genetic resources sourcing issues by establishing mother blocks that actually people can access, and nurseries can also access materials for raising tree seedlings. So one of the other options that we've had is actually installing rural resources. So a peer learning hub where communities can come together and link up with the local advisory services and extension, what we call RRCs, to actually obtain the knowledge and the materials to accelerate tree growing. Another crucial element, I think, of the work has involved pest and disease management, and especially when you're talking about some of the sites where communities have adopted fewer species. So we look at pest and disease management options, so providing guidelines and trainings to actually sort of mitigate problems of pest and disease. I'll leave it there, Mika.
Great, thank you so much, Sammy. So that's just a quick snapshot of the practices that have been really central within Regreening Africa. And I just wanted to summarize a little bit on the advisory models. So of course we have these practices, but the way we're reaching out to the community, there's been a variety of models. As you've seen, there's many implementing partners, and you're about to hear from them. But just as an overview, we have the sort of training, the transfer of technology, direct farmer training, working with government extension. We've also been utilizing lead farmer trainer or farmer to farmer approaches to allow for a large reach within communities, and also community-based organizations or community network-based scaling approaches, looking at saving groups, church groups, different sports, community forest associations, and others. So we just wanted to give this highlight as we go into the cases to show the breadth of the types of advisory models and practices that are really promoted within. So some key messages leading into this session that we hope you will keep in mind is really that this large scale impact restoration is possible. That we need to our practices, there is no silver bullet. We need to match a variety of practices to both the present and potential future local contexts, environmental and needs, and that we need to implementation in local processes and structures. So now I'd like to hand over to Constance to outline the cases, and then we'll be moving into the first case presentation.
Thank you so much, Mika, for setting that stage. So right now we are Thank you so much, Mika. I so appreciate that stage setting. So right now we'd like to have presented 3 case studies. We're going to hear from Ethiopia around the enclosures, and that will be by Malefia Tadele from the Catholic Relief Services. From Rwanda, we're going to hear about tree nursery cooperatives and farmer trainers from Felix Mulindangabo from World Vision. And from Senegal, we'll hear about farmer managed natural regeneration from Anna Daba Ndiaye from World Vision. And all of these cases will be followed by the preliminary results on uptake and adoption from Wolde Johannes Tesfaye, agriculture economist and impact and acceleration scientist from C4 ICRA. So with that, I would also, we will be asking a question in the chat box. We hope you will be responding and continue to present your questions. And with that, I turn it over to our good colleague, Malefia.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Malefia. I'm the project manager for Regreening Africa project at Catholic Relief in Ethiopia. And I'm going to share with you CRS and World Vision Ethiopia experience and exclosure management. You know, exclosures are the main land restoration tools in Ethiopia to achieve this regreening targets. So I will talk about how these exclosures are successful from our own experience. So to give you some background information, land degradation is a serious problem in Ethiopia. Than 80% of the land is degraded to some degree. So to restore this degraded land, the country has designed various strategies, policies, and also programs since the 1980s. So these exclosures are a key land restoration strategy in Ethiopia to restore these degraded lands and also to realize this ambitious land restoration targets that Ethiopia has pledged under the 100 Endbond Challenge. So the country has pledged to restore 22 million acres of degraded land. So the Regreening Africa project targets also contribute to the national overall targets. So these exclosures are mainly these degraded hillsides and communal grazing lands protected by the communities by using these bylaws and social mechanisms. So in addition to the protection using bylaws, exclusion also supported with the soil and water conservation structures, assisted regeneration, and also enrichment planting based on the context of the area. Next slide, please. So the implementation approach that we followed with the Regreening Africa project were, prior to designing an area into an exclosure, awareness raising campaigns and community consultations were conducted. And then following these consultations, the local community and the local government selects the area to be put under area exclosure, and then the sites will be demarcated. So after the demarcation, the communities, mainly the unemployed youth and the landless, including women, organized into groups and also receive these land user certificates from the local government. So following this, these community groups organized in these exclosures also trained on various regreening practices like FMNR, tree management practices, as well as the silvicultural practice to strengthen their capacity on restoring and managing these exclosures. So in addition to this, the communities also establish these local bylaws and also develop management plans and business plan with the support of the local government and project in order to manage the exclosure. So these are really important in the management exclosures, and these are just agreement and rules established by the local committee to guide the management and protection of exclosures. And these bylaws also define the roles and responsibilities of the members, the membership criteria, benefit sharing mechanisms, as well as the type and amount of penalties to be paid because of this rule violation. And bylaws also used to resolve this emerging conflicts within groups. So once these bylaws are established and the communities are organized, then the capacities are built, the communities will practice this regreening practice, will implement these regreening practices in the exclosures and also protect the site from those intruders with the of the government. Next, please. So, the major achievements to date were, to highlight some of the key achievements. When the implementation began, most of those sites were, some of the sites were bare lands. In some sites, there were scattered bushes and some remnant vegetation, as you can see in the pictures. So in the past 4 years, more than 100,000 hectares of this degraded communal land were demarcated and put under the area exclosures in 4 regions in Ethiopia. So we have also witnessed that there is an increased vegetation due to natural regeneration and enrichment planting. And this was happened because the implementation of this FMNR, enrichment planting, and other regreening practices. So in addition to this, tree management practices were also introduced in these exclosures, and this was really a big achievement for Regreening Africa project, because one of the main limitations of this exclosures in Ethiopia was the communities were not allowed to utilize the resources in the exclosures, except this cutting grass and practicing beekeeping. But because of our negotiation and engagement with local government, and we raised the awareness with the stakeholders at local level on the importance of these silvicultural practices and resource utilization to ensure sustainability. So we managed to introduce the silvicultural practices in some pilot area closures in Ethiopia. And there is also an increase in species diversity and composition in those area exclosures, and reduced flood and erosion also witnessed in these exclosure sites. And there is also a job opportunity created for those unemployed youth in the local, with the local community. So these are just the main achievements that we witnessed in the past 4 years. Next slide, please. So when we realize these positive impacts with land restoration in the past 4 years, so the key to achieving these restoration goals were incentives. Incentives are really key to motivate the local community and also to actively engage those community members in land restoration. So we realized this at the beginning of the project, and we incorporated this tree-based value chain based on the site potential. So within the past 4 years, community groups have been benefiting from this exclosure through this tree-based value chain. So to mention some of the benefits that the communities are received, the groups benefited by selling grass, fruits, and seed exclosures. And there is also an improved access to animal fodder and fuel wood. Communities are also getting additional income through beekeeping activities and also fruit orchard by selling these high-value fruits to the local community. They are gaining additional income, and there is also production of tree seedlings by these youth groups, and they are selling in the market and generating income. So these benefits and income-generating activities highly motivated the local community to actively engage in land restoration. Next slide, please. So in the past 4 years, we have also faced with some challenges. So the main challenge that we faced was first this the limited capacity of the local government on the management of exclosures and silvicultural practices. And there was also uncontrolled grazing in these exclosures in some parts of the country, and the conflict in Tigray region was the main challenge. And also witnessed some opportunities in these restored exclosures. Mainly, now the communities are producing this honey in these restored area exclosures. So, and there is this high demand in the local market for quality honey. So by expanding this beekeeping activities and honey production in these area exclosures and increasing the quality of honey, the packaging and also branding, the communities can receive this premium price by selling organic forest honey in the market. And these exclosures also can also be upgraded into ecotourism sites and improve the livelihoods of the local community. And exclosures can also be a source of quality timber poles and also benefit the local communities. These are the opportunities that we have identified. Next slide, please.
Malafia will be finishing up soon. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so the key lessons and messages are first, strengthening the capacity of the local stakeholders on silvicultural practices and sustainable resource utilization is critical to enhance the productivity of these exclosures and also to provide these meaningful economic benefits to the local community. And a strong collaboration between government, community, and community-based organizations also contributed to the success in restoration. And exclosures also are effective in restoring these degraded lands. However, emphasis also should be given to improve also the productivity of these exclosures to provide this meaningful economic benefits to the local community and also to enhance sustainability in the long term. And these exclosures also strengthen this community cohesion and teamwork. And next slide. I'm almost done. Yeah, providing this land user certificates to the local communities also created this sense of ownership and also empowered the local communities. And improving access to diversified and quality planting materials to enhance the productivity of exclosures is through enrichment planting is also important in order to make these exclosures productive and provide these livelihood options to the local community. Yeah, thank you. By this, I finish my presentation.
Thank you so much, Malafia. That was brilliant. And we so appreciate your letting us know all of the parameters that have to be in place and that connection to the important bylaws. We greatly appreciate your presentation. And Malafia, there is a question in the Q&A if you want to type an answer. And otherwise, we'll get to it at the end of this session. So with that, I'd love to introduce now Felix Mulindangabo, who is our good colleague from World Vision Rwanda. Felix, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me well. All right.
It's perfect.
Good morning and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, from your respective location. My name is Felix Mulindangabo, I work for Vision in Rwanda and support the Regreening Africa project in the foundation of monitoring and evaluation as well as learning. My presentation is about scaling tree planting through community-based group. This is one of the prominent practice of land restoration in Rwanda, adopted by Regreening Africa as a context based on adopted practice, considering the context, the situation of Rwanda, a small country with high population density, where land is fragmented in terms of ownership and landscape. Tree seedling production and distribution and planting has been one of the best practice have been implemented by Regreening practice in Rwanda over the last 4 years. The practice is implemented through partnership with 63 farmer cooperatives or groups, because some of the groups do not have legal, they're not legally registered by the National Cooperative Agency, but still they perform well as farmers have come together with the one purpose. We've seen of seedling produced over the last 4 years, accumulating to 9,500,000 to seedling, including multi-purpose trees amounting up to 6 million, and grafted and non-grafted fruit trees equaling to 3,500,000. This approach has brought many direct and long-term benefits because it has improved farmers' knowledge and seedling production. It has also helped to create jobs where we have men and women involved in nursery management. And also it promotes ownership and sustainability as farmers are doing the practice on their own with the capacity building from Regreening Africa projects. Next. Next slide. Yeah. Through the same practice, the Regreening Africa project has established resource centers. As we operate across 4 districts, 3 of them was eligible to host these knowledge hubs. Resource centers are community-based knowledge hubs about agroforestry, where cooperative manage this resource center and they serve their surrounding community in terms of availing quality planting material and also disseminating knowledge. The resource center also support these cooperatives for business opportunities because we've seen many private operators or contractors as well as NGO that approach them to contract them for producing seedlings. Some of these regreening resource centers have already started to win some contracts to produce seedlings and are able to generate income. Next slide. Yeah, to be able to succeed with this approach, we have community-led farmers. These are men and women of integrity who are elected by their fellow farmers in the respective village. Each lead farmer oversees about 40 households, and is able now to carry out the extension from peer-to-peer through the visit, through showing them how to practice tree planting. So we overall have 512 lady farmers with equal number of male and females, including 144 youth. All of them have been trained on scaling the greening practice across their communities. You can see in the pictures during the field visit, and they have been also invited, and they also were provided with bicycles to support them in their able to move around as they facilitate extension from farmer to farmer. Next slide. Yeah, the project provides the capacity building to the farmer and the cooperative members to be able to succeed with this approach. There is quite a number of topics where the capacity building have been provided, including agroforestry practice. Yeah, this include how to establish a nursery, how to prepare tree planting material, how to manage trees. They also equipped with FMNR, how to collect data about the tree monitoring, water management, tree disease and pest management, pest management, tree grafting, beekeeping, biomass cooperation. They were trained as well on gender disability mainstreaming, tree seed sourcing and handling, as well as orchard management. You can see in the photos on rest site where during different activities in nursery, in how to conduct grafting, how to manage nurseries, as well as run the LDSF. You can see images of colleagues from Nairobi facilitated training. Next slide. We've seen some challenges and opportunities as well with this practice. The challenges, because the project is implemented in the eastern province of the country, with semi-arid climate, we encounter the challenge of termites that attacks the tree seedlings, and there has been a high failure of mango due to diseases. We've also seen a low adoption of certain tree species. Farmers prefer some tree species over others. Then there is also a limited number of certain tree seedlings that are highly demanded. There's a low number of indigenous species which are mainly adapted to the location. There is also a low availability of indigenous tree species seeds. And then we realize that there is also a poor attitude towards indigenous tree species. And then this one is, there's high expectation from rural government. As opportunity, the project have been supported by local leadership. We work hand in hand with local government. We also on the existing systems because there's an agroforestry strategy and also around the restoration strategy, set pathways of how to implementing restoration. Then partnership also with ICRAF has been important in terms of promoting research and informing our practice, and then leveraging on the other project and UW program, World Vision programs such as a landscape restoration project that is funded by Australian government. For the fact, these have been opportunities that really have led to the success of this approach. Next slide. Yeah, some of the key lessons drawn and the messages. We realized that the site, scaling the site that led by the farmer or opinion leaders, such as village leader, health and the farmer promoters, have shown better adoption in terms of tree survival and diversity compared to the rest. Then knowledge about the tree species affects its adoption by farmers. Land tenure also impacts the adoption of greening practices because those household dirty land that use land as rental do not tend to adopt restoration as their owners. So seedling availability into farmers, proximity improves also farmer participation into tree planting. In preparation and production of seedling may increase the tree seedling survival. We are facing normally the issue of drought in the eastern part, and so sometimes the rain only set is unpredictable. So when we prepare ahead of time the seedling, it normally helps to increase the tree seedling survival. So farmer-to-farmer exchange visits are very important tool for mindset change other than structured training. More awareness on the tree zone farm is still needed, and working with local communities in the seedling production, increase ownership and participation in tree planting and community members.
Felix, we'll ask you to finish up, please.
All right, thank you. And then I think I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Felix, for that excellent presentation and for sharing all of those details about what it really takes to get this done and all of the benefits. Right now, I'm delighted to turn the floor to Anna Daba Njai, Project Manager, World Vision. Anna, vous avez la parole.
Bonjour, merci Constance. Bonjour, je suis Anna
Good
Dabali.
morning, Constance. My name is Anandai. I'm a project coordinator for Regreening Africa in Senegal. Today, I want to share with you uh, about assisted natural regeneration and how its application is done in Senegal. At the same time, we also talk about challenges and opportunities for extension. With regards to the project, our aim is to regreen 160,000 hectares by 2022. And to achieve this, we have two approaches. We have a direct one and an indirect one. Talking about the direct approach, we started doing the selection and training of community hosts. And after this first stage, we moved on to the choice of uh, lead farmers. And in this group, we chose and trained training farmers. And we have a third stage that has to multiply the trainings for the lead farmers and the training farmers. And we did so in other villages. We can also talk about the involvement of administrative and territorial authorities and collaboration with technical services throughout this stage. The other approach is the influence strategy. And in this phase, we collaborate with other actors to lead them to the adoption of the MNR. Next slide. At this stage, we want to talk about adoption factors for the RNA in Senegal. This is an ancestral practice that was popular within the farming communities. We had to do a recycling and provide training. After that, ensure technical supervision missions with farmers that received training. We had to also communicate broadly in order to achieve our objectives. And for that, we proceeded with radio programs. We also did the sensitization programs in order to reach out to more actors. We also visited some areas which made it easy to um, to learn for farmers, since there are successes in some areas others could learn. The next thing, we can also talk diversification of practices, which led to an improved cohesion. So there were less conflict between farmers and herders through the materialization of cattle paths. We can also talk about diversification of agroforestry practices. All this together with the support of ICRAF. With regards to the involvement of women, we can talk about the use of cooking stoves, because we ask women and men to stop cutting down trees. We should be able to make available alternative means. That's why we provided these cooking stoves for them. Next slide. Now let's talk about the challenges. We are still victim of erosion, bushfires, and the low protection of young trees. We can always take some actions on the field, and we can always protect some of the young trees that are growing. The other thing we can talk about is transhumance and the low diversity of species. With regards to scaling opportunities, now we have the opportunity communicate on the achievements of the project. This is done through social media platforms and newsletters. Now, we can also have national days on trees in order to achieve new objectives. We are able to reach out to the Euro area, and we did so through the national 3-day in order to disseminate information. We can also take advantage of other individual initiatives as well as community initiatives. We can also valorize community engagements and activities. And I'm talking about spaces to protect areas that are affected. Next slide.
En termes de leçons apprises, je veux noter l'implication des autorités administratives et territoriales.
With regards to lessons learned, I'd like to state that the support of the local government authorities was very instrumental. The cross-learning that they provided was very instrumental for the team, and they ensured that we acquired and mastered best practices. But these trainings are not enough. We need a follow-up mechanism and also income generating activities. So the Regreening app, which is a monitoring tool, was used for evidence of achievement, and this was to help to popularize or make these create visibility in terms of the activities. There's no single recipe for regreening, but for each context, it is necessary to have diversified, adapted practices and an overall movement to succeed in regreening and scaling up. Next slide. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was a wonderful presentation, and I'm very grateful you kept us to time. And so thank you so much for the very informative presentation on farmer-managed natural regeneration. So we've heard 3 cases from Ethiopia, from Rwanda, and from Senegal. And right now, I would like to turn our attention to hear about some preliminary results on the adoption of practices through the program presented by the Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning team, and Tesfaye will present at this moment. Thank you, Tesfaye. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Constance. Can you see my slide?
Yes, could you put that in slideshow mode?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
All right. Is
Is
it okay now?
Not yet. I think you have to make a change at the display settings. We are seeing 2 slides together at this point.
Oh, maybe it's sharing from the other side because.
I think if you go to display settings and let's see what our choices are. We're going to try and rectify this the next one over. Display settings. Pier Andrea, can you advise?
Yeah, that's fine. Can you check your what you got under display settings at the top of the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got display settings because now you're previewing. So next to it, display settings, then the one after it. Oh, just on the right.
One?
Yeah, you're on the right.
I'm very happy to share my screen otherwise.
Wait just a moment.
Yeah, if you have the presentation, Mika, at hand, or Constance, maybe, so we don't lose time fiddling with this.
If you just stop sharing, I'll share and move the slides through for you, unless you
All
make
right.
changes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mika. Please
Okay.
proceed.
All right. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tasfai from the aircraft monitoring, evaluation, and learning team. So what I'm going to present here is on behalf of my team. So next slide, please. So in this presentation, I will present some of the preliminary results on the exposure, uptake of regreening practices, and shed light on some of the key messages and the evidencing activities which is underway. So first, I will highlight some of the activities and approach used by MAIL team to track the performance and also measure the impact of the program. So the MAIL team developed the impact evaluation design for the program, where the beneficiaries were randomly assigned to be targeted in year 1 and year 4, so that we have a comparison group to control for some of the confounding factors. So we have carried out data collection at the household level at the baseline back in 2018, and also some uptake surveys to track the progress in the uptake of regreening initiatives. And also this year, the inline survey, which we have already conducted in 5 countries, and also the inline survey is underway for 2 countries, Kenya and Senegal. In addition to household survey, we have also conducted key informat interviews at the village level, and also individual expert key informat interviews with experts in the regreening and land restoration areas. The team also developed a comprehensive program theory of change, which also guided the overall impact assessment that the MAIL component used to evidence the impact of the program. So it consists of 3 aspects: the ex-post impact assessment, and also ex-ante modeling of the long-term impact of the program on on farm incomes. And also we look into some of the aspects of land health using the geotagged polygons that we have collected for each of the households interviewed during the baseline. And this was updated for households in Rwanda during the end line. Next, please. So before I go there, I just want to put some of the things into context. So what I'm going to present here is only for 3 countries, Rwanda, Ghana, and Ethiopia, for which we have already analyzed the inline data. But I'm also focusing only on some of the indicators, and the result will not capture everything. And it is only for the before and the after the intervention comparison. I'm not going to compare the year 1 and year 4. This is because there is no significant difference between year 1 and year 4. It seems like there are some contamination issues. So most of the indicators moved in the same fashion for year 1 and year 4. So I'm not going to present that one. I just focus on the time trend. So as you can see, this graph shows the number of households that have been interviewed back in 2018 at the baseline and followed up during the end line. And then you can see the small bar graph, which is the number of households lost to follow up, which is the attrition. As you can see, it is not very significant. It is less than 10% for Ethiopia and Ghana, a bit around 11% for Rwanda. But I want to point out that about 574 households lost to follow-up during the end line due to the security issue in Ethiopia, specifically in Tigray and Amhara region. Next, please. Yeah, okay, already I have mentioned this one. I just really want you to focus on this one because those results are only at the country level. It is not disaggregated at the program or district or county level. There could be some variation. And we are just focusing on the indicators related to exposure, uptake of the regreening practices. We are not going to capture everything in these preliminary results. Next, please. Okay, so how did the program perform in terms of reaching communities? To answer this question, we have asked the households if they have received any training, information, or support during in the last 4 years prior to the survey. As you can see from the graph, the exposure has significantly increased from baseline to end line, which is more in Ghana, around 64%, followed by Rwanda, and then not very much in Ethiopia. Next, please. We have also asked households on which specific regreening related initiatives they have been provided support. So as you can see from the graph, the support has been predominantly on tree planting, different aspects of tree care and management, and farmers manage natural regeneration. Next, please. So to also link how this can be traced back to the Regreening Africa related intervention models, we have asked the households who have provided them with this support. So majority of households in Ghana and Rwanda indicated that they have been reached through project or NGO and government extension. However, the households in Ethiopia indicated that they have been reached through government extension. This is not surprising because most of the time the implementing partners actually use the existing government institutions and infrastructure to reach to the communities. Next, please. So how did the uptake of different regreening Africa, different regreening practices change from the baseline to inline? So we have asked farmers if they have implemented any of the regreening related initiatives on their farms or homesteads, and it indicates the uptake has actually significantly increased in terms of tree care and management in all 3 countries. And also the number of households planted trees on their farms and also homesteads significantly increased, specifically in Rwanda. This actually corresponds with some of the results that we have seen this morning in the seminar for some of you who have been in that seminar. So it corresponds to that result from the remote sensing. And also farmer managed natural regeneration, the proportion of households engaged in farmer managed natural regeneration increased in Ghana and also to some extent in Ethiopia. Next, please. So we don't stop there. We want to explore further how the uptake has been changed using the Regreening Action Index, which is an innovative analytical tool developed by the MEL team. So it looks into the different aspects of land restoration. So it doesn't only ask whether the households have planted some trees on their plots or not, but it rather asks for different dimensions, including the extent of practice, whether they have planted trees on different land uses, and also the intensity, like what about the diversity in terms of like planting different tree species and things like that. And this Regreening Action Index also captures the intra-household equity dimensions, which looks into the roles of women in terms of decision-making in establishing agroforestry and also the use of the products derived from this activity. Next, please.
Tesfaye, we invite you to finish up. Thank you.
All right, I'm almost there. So we just looked into how the Regreening Action Index moved from the baseline to inline. As you can see, this density plot compares actually that. So as you can see, almost all of the farmers during the baseline were below 0.5 Regreening Action Index point, but at the end line, specifically for Ghana and Rwanda, they have significantly moved above this point. Next, please. And also when we look into different dimensions of the Regreening Action Index, all the 4 dimensions significantly increased for all countries. But I want to just highlight that the woman involvement agency has increased more in Ghana. And this is what we would expect because there has been some focus on this specifically, and there is a PhD work devoted to this. So this is what we would expect. Next, please. So what are the key messages? So our preliminary results shows exposure was significantly increased and more farmers are engaged in land restoration practices compared to the baseline. And as we have seen, women involvement in agency in agroforestry practices have increased and more significant in Ghana. So to look into the long-term impact of the Regreening Africa program in terms of farm income, the modeling activities are underway, and also we are working on triangulating and enriching the results through remote sensing analysis. Thank you. That's all.
Oh, Tesfaye, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. It's so interesting when we get to look across countries and look at those multiple dimensions that you have presented. So we're very, very grateful for the presentation. I would like to take one question, and this one I am going to invite Sammy first and then ask Felix to also respond. This is around, it comes related to Rwanda context, but it's elaborating more towards all of African countries in terms of the preference of exotic trees, which are not adaptable and have a value. So this is in contrast to some of the indigenous trees that we have been promoting. And I wonder if you speak, Sammy, first about these practices that would help us get more indigenous species.
Thank you so much, Constance, for that question. Indeed, it's a major issue across the East African countries and beyond. This over-reliance on few exotic species because farmers have developed a notion that these exotic species are fast-growing and you could get product easily. What we've tried to demonstrate is actually that we have options of indigenous species that are equally fast-growing, that are actually also can also provide benefits. The issue has been, of course, in the past, research work that has focused or overly focused on developing technical management guidelines for a few exotic species that indeed have served forestry plantation needs. And these species have been then over-relied to as product sources. So what we see is really an opportunity for us to start changing practice right from the nursery stages. So working closely by the nursery operators to really inform and involve them in terms of diversifying the production. There is a demand issue in terms of the materials they raise because they get frustrated. For instance, where they're actually producing all the indigenous species and there are no buyers. So we need, of course, policy options and incentives that also create a demand side, a pull factor for some of the indigenous species that we really want to bring out there. So without a demand, most of the nurseries tell us they, of course, don't want to produce the materials, and of course the lying hydro, all the efforts go into waste. So an opportunity for us is, of course, to raise that awareness, but also do on-farm demonstration of the growth issues, because the growth issues has been one of the areas that farmers say, oh, indigenous species are not fast growing enough, we will not get products in reasonable time, so we are opting for, quick growing or fast growing exotics. So one of the options, of course, is to show those demonstration trials within, of course, farms, so that people actually appreciate that with good management, you can actually get good products and also fast growth with indigenous options of species that we have. The issue of course, seed availability and diverse seed availability is a crucial one, because a lot of the indigenous species have also been removed within farming landscapes, but also on forest, because again, we see when logging happens, it goes to really, targeting those big indigenous tree species that were providing, seed sources. So we are losing seed sources of some of the indigenous species. So even for interested communities and farmers wanting to grow the species, they're actually missing quality seed stock to grow some of the indigenous species that we have. That's how I would add.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sammy. That was a very thorough response, and I trust it was very helpful. I just wanted to ask Felix from Rwanda, did you have anything to add to what Sammy has presented? I see that you've been typing responses in the Q&A. Felix, did you want to add?
Thank you so much. You're right. I've been trying to type to a few answers to my colleagues. The challenge is really in terms of preference of tree species. Farmers have the ability to choose the exotic species over the indigenous one, but we're trying to deepen our engagement with the community, to show them the benefits of indigenous trees, and you also try to diversify the tree species so that at least they're able to to choose and also to have a variety of trees. I think it's a matter of time. We think by the time the project is coming to an end, we'll be realizing some of the benefits of those tree species. Most of the indigenous trees that they direct them to adopt are those ones that take long to to grow. But we are trying to bring in those tree species that also can grow fast and they also offer benefits. Then we also try to change the other side of mindset, of focusing on restoration, because these indigenous trees are the ones that are really adaptive, that are resistant to disease compared to exotic one. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Felix. We appreciate that. The mindset, it's so important. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have had an amazing first session where we focused in on practices and approaches, scaling out context-based practices, and we've seen a number of these. Now, I want to thank everyone who's posted a great question in the Q&A and those that are coming over from social media, and I invite our speakers to please continue to answer those in writing. Right now, we want to allow everyone to have a very short break so that you can stretch and get another glass of water or tea, and we will see you back here